Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Hello and happy March. Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is A Woman's Prerogative. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh, I don't really get it. It's a Sunday or Monday. It's not the usual day. No, it's not. We're actually broadcasting a special episode. It's so special because we're going to be talking about boundaries and why always being available is burning us out. Here to discuss this enticing, exciting topic is the star of our show. Her name is Mariska, and she is joining us all the way from Australia. She is a coach. She is an author. She is someone who always shows up when they're supposed to. She's very reliable and very responsible, and she's a great source of information for this topic. Let's welcome her to the show. Hello and welcome. How are you?
Hello. Well, I am just so happy to be here. And yes, on our impromptu Monday/Sunday slot.
Absolutely. And by the way, I almost said New Zealand. It's always like right there on the tip of my tongue to say that you're coming from New Zealand, but you are not. So let's not even go there. But for people who are joining us, hopefully we have a lot of new people joining us at this special time. Tell people about what you do and how you can help them.
So what I do is I work with leaders within the realm of being a little bit more human in your space. Now, how does this look? Well, if you are within a leadership space, and this might be that you have a formal leadership space where you have moved from a specialization into leadership, or maybe you are moving up in your leadership space, or it might be that you're just the leader at home, right? We also lead our own life. So in whichever realm it is that you are showing up as a leader, doing that in a way where it's authentic, it is human, it is actually attached to what we want to do and how we want to show up in life, sometimes might be really, really tricky. And we might get into conversations, have relationships that might feel a little bit more difficult, where we don't necessarily show up the way that we want to, but more the way we are triggered to, especially in some situations. So that's where I help out, and both within the training as well as the coaching realm, to see how we can do that better and be better human beings and become the leader we want to also have in our life. So we start with ourselves and then work our way out from there. And that's what I do. And I'm also looking forward to this topic today because, well, boundaries, leadership, it all goes together.
It certainly does. And it is interesting because there was a time in my life when I really thought it was important to be available as much as possible, to return all text messages and emails and phone calls right away. And someone pointed out to me, you don't actually think about what you're responding to because you're responding so quickly. And at the time, I kind of took it as but today it really makes a lot of sense. You need time to process and digest. But, and this is where I want us to start, many times we are afraid, we're coming from a position of fear that if we don't get back to someone, or if we don't say, yes, I'm available, I'll do it, that we'll potentially lose out. What are your thoughts on this FOMO, this fear of losing out?
Well, my first thought is it is a fear. And whatever we do from a place of fear is not necessarily going to be helpful for us. Except if there's a burning building and you need to run out. Fear is not necessarily going to be helpful in creating a healthy sort of response to it. Fear is when we respond because it needs immediate action. And 99.999% of the time, when we are communicating with another human being, it doesn't necessarily need immediate reaction. We can take a step back. We can breathe. We can think for ourselves first and then react. And yet, when we go from a place of fear, that's not what we do. We just jump in, as you mentioned, Dr. Jacalyn, and it may or may not work out, and it may or may not be the best thing to respond with. I'm also not saying, because the flip side of this might also be true. So when you think about fear, we have the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So depending on how you typically respond to fear, it might be that you want to fight, so just jump in. Might be that you want to flee, so you avoid it altogether. Or it might be that we play dead, so we ghost somebody for a while. There might be different responses that we have towards whatever the thing is. And understanding that if we do this from a place of fear, it might not be necessarily helpful. So understanding this is the first step. And then, of course, noticing it when we are in it, because yes, there's one thing to know it with the head. There's quite a different thing to experience it with the body. So that's my thoughts on this at the moment. Dr. Jacalyn, how about you?
I definitely agree with you. I think that as we become more and more confident in our work and are acknowledged as being experts, we also get invited to do more things. And it's also, as a professional, as an entrepreneur, business owner, it's kind of like, well, where do you draw the line? Do you say yes to everything because you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings? Or I know for myself, I think to myself, well, I'd like to do something with this person, but what they proposed, although it sounds terrific, it's not really in alignment with what I'm doing. So you have to make those considerations because you don't want to isolate anyone. You don't want to offend anyone. But at the same time, we're talking about getting burnout. So if we are taking on everything that comes our way, we probably will get burnout and resentful.
Oh, yes. Which is also not good, right? Because now we are bringing in some of that negative energy that will also not be helpful.
So what do you think is behind this whole thing, aside from the fear of missing out? Because today we're talking specifically about women, and obviously we're generalizing. We're based on our own knowledge and our own experience. But as a woman, by being in a position where you want to do well in life, whatever your role is, you may take on other things. Even as a parent, you may take on things that really should be delegated to your spouse or your significant other, or even to the children. I know parents who do so much for their kids. They do their homework, they do their like all kinds of things, and the child never actually gets to experience what it's like to have that kind of pressure. But what they'll say, the parents will say is, you know what, I don't want them to have pressure. I've had pressure my whole life. I don't want them to have pressure. But the truth is, life is filled with pressure, and we get to choose how we show up. So if we don't ever get any training for it, how are we supposed to know how to deal with it?
I am with you on that. And to me, if I do the thing that the other person needs to be doing, it's almost like I am taking away an opportunity for them, right? I am actually, it's almost, if you think about this in terms of food, I am literally taking all the food off their plate. So how the hell are they supposed to eat and live if I do that? So to me, it doesn't make sense. I want to expose them to as much learning as possible so that they are prepared for life. That's my job as a parent. That's my job as a leader. I need to enable the other person to be able to handle these things on their own. And the only way that they will be able to do that is for them to do it, not for me to do it. I can do it. I have already done it. I have done it 1,000 times. I know how to make models and how to work out the way the star system is supposed to be assembled on a project. It's not my job to do that anymore. It might be my job to guide. It might be my job to help them find resources if they don't have the resources. It is not my job to do. So that to me is very, very important. It's a very important way of thinking. And it's a shift that we need to make. Because if we don't make that, one, we will get burned out because we keep on putting everything on ourselves to help the other person, which we're not actually helping anybody, really. We're not helping them because we're taking the learning from them. And we're not helping ourselves because we have already learned it and now we are overburdening ourselves. So we're not helping anything, although we do it in the name of helping. So it is really a mindset. And I know for me in any case, especially within the female form that we have set up in the Western civilization. I don't know as much about the Eastern civilization, but it might have the same ringings of truth. We do have the role of nurturer. We do have the role of taking care of. Now, we can take care in different ways. And it doesn't mean that when I leave you to struggle, even though it might hurt me to see it, you still need to go through it so that you can learn the lesson that you need to learn. I've already learned that lesson. My lesson might be to look at you struggling, right? And wait for you to come and ask me for help instead of just jumping in every second that I see that you might be faltering. So it's partly, I think, the way that we've been growing up. It's partly some of our environmental elements. It might be some of our own things. I know for some people it feels a bit more difficult than others, and we might have a little bit more people pleasing in it, or we might have different things that plays up in it for us. So that's where I would go with that. And I think it is, as you mentioned, Dr. Jacalyn, a little bit more, most probably for ladies than it is for the guys. I am making a big assumption. Yeah, it would be great to hear from the guys. What do you experience?
It would be great. Anybody who's watching wants to drop a comment, and we'd love to hear what positive messages you have to say about your experience. The one thing that I think it's important that we discuss, because I do teach a course on setting boundaries, is when you're not used to setting boundaries, you may not be used to the, I'm going to say, feedback / fallout that you receive. So when you define your boundary and you excuse yourself from attending something, or you just provide the answer of no, because no is a complete answer, you may get feedback from the other person that it's very hard to deal with. And some of these scenarios can look like actually behavior that a child might demonstrate: screaming, yelling, kicking, jumping up and down, trying to get your way. And sometimes as humans, we will succumb to this. We will actually break down our barriers and whatever our commitment was to ourselves, and just to have peace. And this happens a lot with children, right? That's what children do. Sometimes they want to get their way and they will scream and yell, and the adult can't take it anymore. And finally they're like, here, take the candy, here, watch the TV, here, do whatever it is you want to do, because I can't take it anymore. But by doing that, we're teaching something, which is, if I scream and yell enough, you will give in. So Mariska, what are your thoughts about the fact that when we set a boundary and we provide the information, which is, thank you for the invitation, however, I am not able to attend, with no explanation, and the other person starts to lose it? How do you respond, or what would you share with our audience about how they can respond so they can still feel good about their decision?
Well, one, I would think about what might be the responses that I might get. And as you mentioned, Dr. Jacalyn, I mean, there's a reason children does certain things, right? It works. It does. It's how it is. Kids are really good at knowing exactly what works. And for some people, it works better than for others, right? So in some cases, they'll be nagging and nagging and nagging and nagging and nagging and doesn't stop. So the person would give in. And in other cases, it might be that they get the silent treatment, and that has a reaction. So they understand what works with that specific person. And typically in our family relationships, those trigger points or hot buttons are a little bit easier to push because we've grown up with the people and we've learned some of these behaviors with them. But it also applies in the wider world. So understanding understanding for myself, what is my triggers? What sort of behaviors would trigger me to most probably give in if this is something that's really important to me? So if I'm a people pleaser and I don't want people to feel bad about stuff and I want them to feel good, I might give up some of my boundary and some of my things that I really believe in because I want to salvage the relationship, which may or may not salvage it, but that's the story I'm telling myself. Or it might be that I have a different approach to it because I have learned something different. So first, understanding my own response. If this person's going to yell, what would I do? If this person is going to be pleading, what will I do? So understanding what I would respond, and then understanding what do I want to respond. So the response I might give, remember fear, might be from a place of fear, right? I don't want to lose their friendship. I don't want to lose respect. I don't want to lose whatever the thing is that we're fearing. So if I do not respond from fear, and I respond from a place that's whole and healthy within myself, the way that I want to respond, how might that look like? Even when this person might be losing it. Now, if they feel that yelling normally works for them, I don't need to subject myself to it, right? If they want to yell, I can't control them yelling, but I can control myself. And I don't have to stand in the room while they are doing it. I can tell them that, well, I have told you what I can and what I cannot do. And I'm seeing that you are having a bit of a response to this at the moment. So for now, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. And then when you have settled a little bit and thought about it, and we can have a calm conversation, I'll come back. And then we can have a calm conversation about it. So that might be a response. It might be something in between. There might be a variety of different things that we can do and say and respond to this person that is healthy instead of doing it from fear. And I know, Dr. Jacalyn, as you mentioned, you have a whole course on this. So what is it that you would tell people?
Thank you, Mariska. What I do tell people is, as we evolve and we work on ourselves and we realize that we need to set boundaries for many reasons, don't expect the people you interact with on a regular basis who are not doing the self-work to actually be receptive, because now you're changing the dynamic of the relationship. And one thing that may happen is you may be called names. You're so this, you're so that, you're not willing to compromise, you're rigid, all these things that people may say. But the truth is, it's because the other person is uncomfortable with the boundary you have set. And when you have two people like us who do work on ourselves all the time, we respect that. We're like, wow, that's cool. She's got a boundary on that. I love it. We actually respect it. And then we respect ourselves. But when we're constantly saying, yes, yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll do that. Or just agreeing with someone, at some point, I guarantee you, we will not like ourselves. We will not only be upset with the other person, we'll be more upset with ourselves because we agreed to do things that we didn't want to do. And we just said yes, just to shut the person up instead of establishing boundaries. So, Mariska, the one thing that I always say to people is name calling is off the table. What you can say is, Mariska, I feel uncomfortable that you are saying no because you always say yes. And then Mariska, you could address that. What would you say as we're just role playing?
Well, I might say something like, you know what? I actually had a bit of a thought about this. And to me, it is more in alignment to not do this, whatever the thing was, at the moment. And that's why I'm saying no. It just makes more sense for me. If I'm going to say yes, I know that my whole heart won't be in it. And I don't want to disappoint you. So I'd rather say no and know that we are good than say yes and I'm going to disappoint me and you. So
absolutely.
That might be my response to it.
Thank you for that. So let's talk about something else. What about manipulation? When people use manipulation to try to coerce someone to do something, and they can do this in a lot of different ways. And I think of this as passive aggressive behavior. But what they do, because they've known the person for so long, that's what we're talking about, relationships where you know each other, and saying no or taking yourself out of the scenario is not something that you typically would do. So the person starts to try to manipulate you by going to what they know triggers you and causing that fear. Well, you know, if you don't do this, then blah, blah, blah. I might leave you. I might not talk to you again. I might not invite you. And then that whole thing starts. And so you have to look at it and analyze, okay, so this person is now basically threatening me, right? They're emotionally blackmailing me. Is this the kind of relationship that I want to be in? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I would ask myself that question. Is this the type of relationship that I want to be in? Because honestly, if you know what the buttons are, right? And hopefully I've done my work, so I know what my buttons are. And if I have somebody that wants to manipulate my buttons, well, it's a bit of a problem because they really just want their own way. They're not thinking about what I want. They're not thinking about what might be healthy for the relationship. And if you're gonna threaten me, I'm sorry, I have very severe reactions to threats. If you're gonna threaten me around, oh wow, this is the end of the relationship, or I might not invite you again, by all means, that is it then, because that's also your choice, right? You make your choice, I make my choice, and we all good. But do not let me. I'm not gonna fall for the whole, oh yeah, but this would be the worst thing ever. Like, yeah, okay, that's fine. It may or may not happen, and I'll be okay with it if it does happen, because it's still your choice. Evidently, then you don't also want to be in a relationship with me that has healthy boundaries. So it might be the time for us to part our ways. That's
absolutely. One of the things I want to talk about in terms of setting boundaries, which I think that most people can relate to this if you have or ever have owned a telephone. So my father used to say, people call us at their convenience. And that doesn't mean that we have to answer the phone. And if you think about that, it's actually true. Like when it's convenient, you pick up the phone and you call someone. I know today I typically would text someone or WhatsApp someone before just calling out of the blue. But so someone calls you and you see their name on the phone, but you're in the middle of doing something. And so the understanding is, if you're close with someone, it's a family member, it's your significant other, is you pick up the phone. I call you, you pick up the phone. But in truth, you may not actually be totally present because you're in the middle of something. And so what I've seen happen, and it's happened with me in conversations, someone might say, are you listening? And the answer is no. Actually, I'm not listening because I'm in the middle of doing something. So what I will say to people is that when someone is calling you, they're calling at your convenience. And if you decide to pick up the phone, you need to share with them that you only answered the phone because you saw their name and you didn't want them to worry, or you didn't want to keep them waiting, but you're actually not available. If you don't say that, then now you have a problem because the person's like, well, why'd you answer the phone? I've heard this. Why would you pick up the phone if you're not actually available? So it's like a catch-22. So you have to figure out what is the boundary you're setting. But if you're available all the time, in other words, let's say right now you and I are on television and you pick up the phone and take a phone call. I'm going to be like, what is she doing? I'll be like, that's kind of disrespectful to me. Why is she taking a phone call? Just like vice versa. But people never think about that. And then I want to share one more thing and have you weigh in on this. Another thing is it's like reading body language. I've seen this where someone comes up and they're behind someone and they start talking to the back of their head. Hello, blah, 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 blah. And the person's doing something. Maybe they're on a Zoom call, they're typing, they're reading a book. And the person behind them is like, why aren't you listening to me? Well, why didn't you ask for permission? Why didn't you come around the desk, see that I'm doing something, go, okay. Or maybe pass a note, need to talk to you about something. But set a boundary. And I think that's what's important because it's about respect. And when we feel disrespected, all kinds of negative emotions can come up. And then you've got a problem potentially in the relationship. Thoughts?
Yeah. It reminds me of our little Listening Lazy song. And it says very clearly in said song, for you to listen, you actually have to make eye contact. You need to look in my face, right? So if I'm speaking to the back of somebody's head, I don't know whether they're listening. I don't know what they're busy with. But if I go to the front of them and I can actually look them in the eyes and I can see that they're registering that I am in front of them, and I then speak, different story. And this is something that I know that most people would have had some interaction that didn't go as they thought it might because of exactly that, right? Either there wasn't a boundary drawn, they didn't listen properly, or they didn't get listened to for whatever reason. Might have been the wrong approach. And it's small little things. It is so small, and yet we can blow it up to be so big. And it can feel so huge. And yet, if we change those small little behaviors, it makes such a big difference. And I know that, I coach people on a daily basis. And while I'm in that conversation, I am 100% present. And yet, I know for myself, then it's the end of the day, my brain is tired, and I would ask my husband what he would like to drink, whether it's a coffee or cool drink or whatever. And I might speak to the back of his head. Yes, I know, I do it too. Or I might only be listening with half an ear because my brain is already on what to make for dinner, next steps of something, right? So understanding our presence makes a difference in the interactions we have. And we cannot always be 100% present. To your point, Dr. Jacalyn, with phones, it is literally convenient for the other person to phone you. So if you answer the phone, do express whether this is a convenient time for you to speak or not. Telemarketers has a great way of doing that. They normally, well, not all of them, but I have found a few of them where they would say, so is this a good time for us to have this conversation? Typically, because it's a telemarketer, I would be, no, it's not, because I really don't want to talk to you, regardless of the conversation or whether it was a good time or not. But doing that with friends and family can really be helpful so that we can check in with them. Remember, it was a good time for us to phone. It doesn't mean that it's a good time for them. And no, they are not the secretary at a building where we are going to make appointments so that they have to be available all the time. It's not the case. That's not why they're sitting at their phone or why they answered it. They answered it because you are a loved one and they most probably just wanted you not to worry about stuff. So remember that.
Absolutely. Mariska, I was teaching my course, Setting Boundaries and Asking Permission. And at the beginning of the course, this was in London, I asked all of the attendees to please put their phones away. And I remember one person got very upset and said, well, I have to have my phone out. And I said, you sign up for this course. It's called Setting Boundaries and Asking Permission. So what I'm saying to you is, unless you have children or elders that you are the only point of contact, I'm asking for 2 hours to put the phone away. And this person couldn't do it, could literally not do it, and ended up taking phone calls during the class. And so as the presenter, I felt very disrespected, but I didn't take it personally because I thought, well, you traveled all the way to this country because the person wasn't from there, and you paid for this course and you were actually not paying attention. But what I want our viewers to take away from this, because I think this is the most important thing, is when you're setting a boundary, it's not to be disrespectful, it's to be respectful. Because when someone wants to share something with you, they want to know that you're actually paying attention and listening. And when we don't do that, the other person knows it. Are you still there? Are you listening? What is that noise? Are you doing something else? We know when we're not being listened to. So that doesn't feel too good. So to me, it makes more sense to say, Mariska, I have something to share with you. It's going to take about 10 minutes. Would this be a good time? So if someone contacted you right now from the other room, Mariska, I need to talk to you. Is this a good time? You're on a television show. I don't think so. The same thing with me, because how could you possibly listen to someone else while you're doing what you're doing? And I think that that's where people take it very personally. They feel like, oh, I don't matter. But actually, you do matter, because the person's saying, listen, I know you have something important to share. I can't listen right now. So it's important to tell them when you can listen. When will you be available? What do you think, Mariska?
I think that is in all circumstances. I mean, this is a no, and this is when I might be able to comply to said request, or not at all, if that's the case, right? So in the case of the telemarketer, sorry, this is not a good time, and I really don't want to speak to you at all. In the case of friends or family, this might not be a good time, but I can talk to you after 5, right? Then my day is done and I can speak then. If it is an emergency, I might be able to do it like for 5 minutes or in an hour, whatever the case might be. But giving them a time frame, giving them an idea of when would be a good time, so that they can phone you back, so that they can move their own expectations. Boundary setting is also about expectation setting, and expectation setting from our side and from their side, so that we both understand what the expectations might be, and we can work around that. It is an alliance. It is a relationship. There's a reason it's called a relationship. We are both contributing to it, not just from one side or the other side. We both need to be contributing to the same thing. So they have their own boundaries and we have our own boundaries. And the clearer we can be with them, the easier it is for somebody to actually comply and help to do the thing that we need to do and to set both of us up for success. But if we don't have it, we sort of tiptoeing around things, and we might be stepping on each other's toes and then get upset with each other. And it was just unnecessary to start off with, because we didn't set boundaries, we didn't set expectations, and we didn't know how to deal with them either. Best time to do all of this typically is when we are both in a good mood, before it goes to crap. Because at that stage, you might go into your fear responses of some sort. But if that isn't the case, then removing ourselves from that situation so that we can get into a bit of a calmer state would be helpful too. So that's where I come from with that. And to your point, Dr. Jacalyn, your story of said person being on the phone all the time. I remember going to a show once, and on stage, this performer expressly mentioned that no phones to be used while busy with the show. And the show, I think, was an hour and a half, right? So you pay so that you can go and watch a show. And then the person says very specifically, do not use your phone at any time during the show. There was one person that did. So, of course, the whole place is dark except for this one person having their little phone light on. The person on stage stopped and said, you there with your phone on, switch it off. I'm not going to continue until you do. And he waited and waited. And the person got very embarrassed, switched their phone off, put it away, and no phones were seen for the rest of the show.
It's almost like the person's testing it to see, is this person really going to do what they said they're going to do? So I really admire that performer for being accountable, because I think that that's also something that comes up. People think, are they really going to do whatever they promise to do? So when you say you're going to do something, please do it. And I have an example to share that I know I've told you before, but when I was in corporate, I was part of a team and we worked on this huge presentation. It was about $5 million. And we went in to do the pitch to the client. And I was at the boardroom table and I was at this podium that was kind of, a half podium on top of the table. And the three people who were the highest ranking in the company were sitting in front of me. I had not met them. I met the other people that were helping out with giving the information for the proposal. And my boss was there. And so these three guys were on their phone. And I would say they were at least 25 years younger than I am. And they're on their phone. They never even looked up. They didn't look up to acknowledge me, to shake my hand. And so the person who was my main contact, she said, why don't you go ahead and present? So I just stood there and I didn't say anything. And everyone is looking at me. My boss is like, I can feel him looking at me. And so someone said, we're waiting. And I said, I understand that. I'm looking forward to this presentation. My team and I spent a lot of time preparing to give you what the solutions and recommendations are. However, these three gentlemen are on their phone. So the one guy looked up and he gave me a very dirty look, and I could feel like sweat trickling down my back. I could feel like my hair starting to get wet. Like I was getting very nervous. So I said to the guy, I said, I know how important your roles are in this company, and I'm sure you're not going to want to miss anything that your team and we have put together to give you resolution and help potentially increase your stock price. And then they put the phones down. But it was probably 8 or 9 minutes into the time that they allotted for me to present. And I felt like I was going to be sick, because to set that kind of boundary, they could have thrown me out. They could have said, hey, get out. But I was so happy because my boss and subsequently his boss, they told me that they supported me and that I did the right thing. But it's about setting a boundary. I'm not going to go through a $5 million pitch that we spent probably 6 months working on, and you are not paying any attention. Why should we even go through? Why waste another hour of time? But not everyone can do that. And I'm glad that I did do it, because especially in business, if someone is not paying attention to you, if you're at a business meeting and the person's on the phone, you're not getting that deal. That relationship isn't solid. There's absolutely no mutual respect there. So when it happens, be aware of it. Now, Mariska, if this does happen, are you advocating doing what I did? Maybe you have some other scenarios. Maybe somebody would just walk out and say, I'll come back at a different time. Or maybe just start with the presentation, knowing that the person who owns the budget has the ability to say yes, is sitting right in front of you and not listening. What would you do?
I would go your approach, and noticing that it will be uncomfortable, right? Also, one thing about boundary setting is the more often we do it and the more regularly we do it, the better we get at it. So understanding that is very helpful. So do practice this as often as possible. It's like a muscle of anything, right? The more we practice it, the better we get. The other thing that I would keep in mind is, as you said, Dr. Jacalyn, it's not, one, it's not a sign of respect, right? And two, they're going to miss everything. So if they are there and they are on their phones, my brain's going to, okay, one, do we need you in this room? because evidently there's something that's more important on your phone. So if you are not required in this room, I'll be okay with you excusing yourself and bringing in somebody that will be able to make the decision that needs to be made. Otherwise, put your phone away, because this is not the allotted time for it. It's the same as people having their PCs open while they are in a meeting. Like, oh yeah, I'm just taking notes. That might be true, and that might not be true. I also know that your PC has a variety of other things on it, right? So it might not be the best place to do it. And I know, especially these days, we are so intertwined with technology. We forget how to be human with each other. And when we have a PC up in a boardroom, right, it's literally a barrier between us, except for the fact that the table is a barrier between us and the other person. The PC is a barrier between us and the other person. Your phone, even just laying on the table, whether it's face up or face down, I do not care, is a barrier, because psychologically it's telling me that it is more important than me and this conversation right now. So remember what signals you are sending when you are sending them, because we are doing it all the time. And I cannot expect somebody to give me their undivided attention for anything if I don't do the same thing, right? It's just common courtesy. And it is the social agreed norm for us as human beings. We know, as Dr. Jacalyn, you mentioned it early on, we know when somebody's paying attention and when they're not. We know when we have all of that attention directed at us and when it's not, regardless whether they're on their phones or not. I mean, when they're on their phones, they're just making it blatant. It's like, I don't respect this conversation. I don't respect you. And technically, I don't even respect myself, because I cannot say that I'm going to set a boundary and not be in this room. So that's my thoughts on it.
Spot on. Cheerio. Very good. I agree with that. And something that you mentioned, I just want to look at a little bit further, is I will have people say, do you mind if I take some notes? I don't mind if you take notes. Thank you for asking. But what I do know is when you are putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, you are no longer listening. And what ends up happening is, I'm sorry, I missed what was the last sentence that you said? Because you were writing. And then people will say, well, I can't remember everything. Well, here's the thing. Most of what we say, there's certain bullet points that you can pull out of it, right? There's a lot of filler that we say, a lot of things that are, examples, whatever it might be. So by paying full attention and listening without taking notes, you will pick up some things. And in the moment, you may be able to understand something more fully than reading notes later. Oh, what was this word? I don't even know what the word was. So you're missing out on a lot of it. And most things are recorded so that you could ask for the recording later. So what I really share with my clients is, don't take notes. Just listen. Now, can you take some screenshots? Maybe if there's a presentation, ask first, is it okay if I take screenshots? Take the screenshots and then later you can refer to it. But if you're spending a lot of your time writing or typing, you are definitely going to miss something.
That is true. Dr. Jacalyn, I have a question. So yes. When you have, and I know for some, we don't always have the same way that our brains work. And I know for some people, especially when they have ADHD and types of brain activity where it might be a little bit more active than other people, it is helpful for them to have something that can help them center themselves. So in those cases, what would be a more effective way for them to do that?
That's a great question. And I think I've known people who have things like this, like restless legs, for example, or they can't keep their hands still, and then they're fidgeting. So there are some things that you can use even in your hands for fidgeting, because it does take your attention away from whatever it is. But it can also be a case where you train your mind. Okay, this session is going to be 45 minutes. So I am going to think of my brain as a storage bin. And I always love this. There was a visual that someone shared a long time ago between the male brain and the female brain. And the male brain has a bunch of boxes in it, like a sock drawer, and you put little things into different compartments. Whereas the female brain had all these wires going, it was constantly thinking and going and going. And so what I would suggest is that you just train your brain to be on for this particular period of time, so that no other thoughts. And by the way, it takes work. It is not something that all of us can do. But I think if you can learn how to meditate, and I've heard a lot of people say, I can't meditate. We can all meditate. Okay. We're meditating when we're deep in thought. Even if we're going for a walk and we're not on our phone or we're not listening to music, we can be in a state of meditation. But I think when you train your brain to keep all the noise out for a certain amount of time, and if a thought does come up, you acknowledge it, but then you let it go so that you can be back and be present. Now, something else is when you're taking, let's say you're involved in some kind of educational program, and it might even be at work, and you don't understand what they're talking about. You have literally no clue. So you completely and totally just check out. You're like zoned, you're like there, but you're totally not there. Have you ever had that happen?
Unfortunately, yes, especially when it is interesting but dry content.
Dry. Like for me, it was chemistry when I was in high school. I just was bored with it. I mean, I get the importance of it and I have a lot of respect for people. But my point is, when it's something that you're not actually interested in, you may have to do existing work so that your brain actually picks up some of the concepts. So to me, when there's a subject that I don't fully understand, I will just start researching it. And eventually certain things are going to start to click, but it might be the way that it's being presented. It might be presented at a very high level. And so I know when I was growing up, I'll be 63 this month. Whoo! When I was growing up, the philosophy was the longer that a sentence was, the better. The more words, the longer the words. And then I know I've shared this, but I was in corporate and my boss was much younger than me. And he's like, everything that you write has to fit into a Twitter feed. I'm like, what is Twitter? So I think it was 122 characters. So I had to completely retrain my brain from thinking that long words, big words, long sentences, that was what was one. And now it's like quick and easy. Just, in fact, I was watching a reality TV show recently and they kept using the word sus. I'm like, what is sus? It stands for suspect. It sounds suspect, but they can't even say the whole word. It's just sus. So for someone like me, I'd have to have some kind of tool to figure out what people were even saying. So I think the point is that we can train our brain to receive information if there's room to receive. And if we're open to receiving, if we go into something saying, I'm not going to learn anything here. I already know everything there is to learn. Are you going to be learning? Probably not. And people say that to me all the time when it comes to listening. People say, I don't need to listen. I have a PhD. I have this. And I'm thinking, you really need to listen, because they're not listening. They just keep talking. But sometimes you can't get people to change. They're not open. They lose that childlike wonder.
That is true. So with the leaders that I work with, I know typically they think they listen really well. So we go through a bit of an exercise to rate the way that we think we listen. And then we have another exercise where we actually need to practice it and then rate ourselves again. Now, in all the cases that I have had so far, nobody's score at the beginning and the second time was the same. Regardless of what the score was, it was always lower. We think we listen. But when we really go into, and I'm not even talking about coach-like listening, I am just talking about active listening, right? We think we listen, but if we really go and we practice decent listening, keeping our mouth shut is part of listening. You do not speak. So doing that and not interrupt, just practicing it. We can test it out for ourselves. And I mean, if you want to lie to yourself and say, oh yeah, well, I'm the best listener on the planet, go for it. You are only lying to yourself, right? Everybody else around you know the truth. They know how well we listen because they are on the receiving end of this. So if you want to know whether you're really listening, either test it out for yourself. And if you are afraid that you're going to lie to yourself, ask somebody that knows you really well and that's not afraid to tell you the truth. Because yes, I can ask somebody I know really well, but they might want to placate me, or they might want to not hurt my feelings. So they'll say, oh no, you're the best listener on the planet, don't worry about it. Which may or may not be true, right? So different relationships, different environments makes a big difference on how we are listening. And no, even from me being a coach, I know that I don't always listen as well as I can. And that's just active listening. That's not even including all the other types of listening that I'm supposed to be doing. So we can always work on that. So I don't know about you, Dr. Jacalyn, but if people that has a profession in listening struggle with it, I don't know about the rest of the population.
Very true. Good points. You know, we've had a number of comments today, and I always appreciate it. We don't always have time to go through it, but I want to bring this one up from at John-DI7MU. Thank you for the question. What if what the speaker is stating is falsehoods? This is a great question. So someone's talking to you and you suspect or even know that they're lying to you. Okay. I have seen this happen many times. And what one person is saying sounds suspicious. It sounds like they may be exaggerating or lying. Now, there's a few ways that you can react to this. The first is, you're such a liar. All you do is lie. I can't listen to you anymore because everything you say is a lie. Okay, that is not going to help the situation. The only thing that's going to do is now pin you against the other person. And now the person's back is against the wall, right? Now they have to defend themselves. And so now they're going to defend themselves, but you don't believe them anyway. So that's going to go nowhere. So another scenario, and then I'm going to go over to you, is you could repeat what they said. You know, Mariska, I heard you say this. That's an interesting point because I did some research, or my understanding, or based on my experience, it's actually this. Now, that's also going to get into a debate. So some people like to debate. If you like to debate and you've got time, you say to yourself, you know what, I got about an hour right now. I don't mind debating this, but then you have to be able to back it up. And then the third scenario is you do not engage. You register in your minds, you know what, this person is giving information to me on a regular basis, and I don't think it's true. You choose not to engage, and instead you protect your energy and you limit your time that you interact with this person. There are my three scenarios. What are your thoughts on them?
I enjoy both. Well, all three of the scenarios. I'm not too sure about scenario one. Sounds like potentially you might put it this way. The intentionality of that scenario sounds like I'm just picking a fight. So
could be. Some people like that, by the way. Some people like to pick a fight. Some people like to be right. It's like 1 for me, 0 for you. And by the way, you're welcome. Thank you for the question. So where I want to bring this all back to, I've shared this before, but so if you're watching Survivor season 50, okay, I love reality TV shows. So Survivor 50 is out now. Survivor 49, I'm watching the end of it. But at some point, someone needs to build a fire, right? To stay warm, you need a fire. So you have to have a flint, you have to have kindling, you have to, listen, I'm not a fire expert. I've never built a fire. Are you kidding me? I would light my nails on fire. Anyway, someone is building the fire, meaning they're setting the stage for the heat to start, right? So in the conversation, this person's lying. Okay, so it's starting to feel a little hot. It's getting a little uncomfortable because you know they're lying. So you have a choice. Do you step into the fire so that you get burned, or do you back away? Now, sometimes people might think, well, if I back away, that means that I'm a wimp, or they start defining themselves in terms, or, I'm too easy, or she always gets over on me because I don't stand up for myself. It doesn't mean any of that. It means whatever it is that you tell yourself. But I personally am a person of peace. I don't want to engage. And if I say to someone, I know that you're lying, it is not going to go well because I name called, first of all. And second of all, what is my proof? So even if I said, you know what, I've got 23 pages of information that show the exact opposite of what you said, where's the relationship going to go?
Yeah. And they might have the same, well, not the same 23 pages, but they might have their own 23 pages of stating exactly the opposite.
Exactly.
Okay? We don't know. We don't know. Every person goes from, well, the truth that they think is the truth. Whether it is universal truth or not is a different question altogether. But understanding what is it that they're actually seeing. And we might go with that curiosity. Do we need to agree with them? Nobody said we have to, right? There might be a small thing that's a truth within what they are saying, but the whole thing might not be the truth. So goes back to the question, and Dr. Jacalyn, you mentioned it too, around what's the relationship that I actually want to have with this human being, right? Do I want to build on it, or am I not too worried about it? And that means that maybe I want to let it go. And it doesn't need a fight for me to let it go. I can just let it go.
That's right, because the only thing we have a choice of is protecting our energy. So if we want to spend all of our energy outing this person, so to speak, we can do it. So here's an example that I'm going to give. It just popped into my head, and I see we're like way over time, but that's okay because it's Sunday, Monday. So here's an example. You come home from work late, and your significant other says, you're late for dinner. I called you. You didn't answer the phone. What were you doing? And you say, you know what? It's interesting, but I stopped by the library. Oh, that is interesting. You don't go to the library. Yeah, I stopped by the library and I wanted to see if they had a book on whatever. And then your spouse says, well, where's the book? You know what? Actually, I just skimmed through it. I didn't take it out. I left the book there. So in the meantime, you actually stopped at a bar after you went to the library. You maybe even drove by the library. You went into the parking lot, right? So there's some truth about the library, but it's not the exact truth. But you eliminated mentioning that you stopped for a drink because you knew if you mentioned it, it wasn't going to go over well. And you didn't pick up the phone because you were drinking, there was loud music, and then the person would know. So you told a partial truth. And that's what people do. We take the story and we massage it so it fits in with what we want people to know. And here's a perfect example. This just happened today. So the woman who was abducted, Nancy Guthrie, you may have heard of her, 84 years of age. I was on TikTok today, and there was a whole video that they found her body in a pond. And there was a film crew following whomever. And I thought to myself, that's interesting because I didn't see that on the news. I just watched the news. So I started going through all the different news stations that I look at on my phone because I don't watch network news. And none of them covered this story. And I realized, you know what? That story was a complete lie. That was artificial intelligence. But someone will believe that that's the truth. So what I suggest is this, and then I'm done on my soapbox for this topic, which is decide where you want to put your energy. If someone is not telling you the truth, then that should signal something to you. Maybe they're not someone you can trust. Maybe they're not someone you have in your inner circle. What if they're already in your inner circle, you're saying? What if they're already one of your family members? You have to be cautious. But by confronting them, the only thing you're going to do is you're going to put a wall between the two of you. Is there any way to overcome that wall? Yes, if they are open to it. You could have a conversation. Mariska, I just wanted to know if we could have a few minutes to have a real heart-to-heart. Are you open to that?
I am.
You're open to that. Great. Well, the last time we had a conversation, you said something about this pen being green. And I actually had a question about it, because when I look at it, it looks yellow to me because of the green screen. You can't see it. It looks yellow to me. What was your perception? How do you see it as green? Can you share more about that? So get the person to open up about their perspective of it. And then they'll give you why they think it is the way that it is. And so now at least you have more information. You don't have to dismiss them as an outright liar. You can see that they have a different perspective. And many times this is the case with politics, right? Like with what's going on in the world today, we don't have all the facts. We only know what it is we read or we see, or from people that, God forbid, they know, who live in these places, who are on the ground giving witness feedback based on what they see, which may not even be the whole picture. So when it comes to life experiences, we don't really know. So all we can do is be curious and ask questions and listen to our intuition. Does that feel right in my body, or something off? And if it feels off, we don't have to knock the person over the head and call them names. We can just choose to disengage.
Yeah. And it's a great way for us to be in touch with ourselves, right? If there is something that feels off, what about it feels off? And remember, we are all human. It might be that the person is scared that they lose our affection. And because they are scared that they lose our affection, or they might get in trouble, or whatever the repercussions or the risk is, and why they are doing what they are doing, right? There's a reason behind it. It may or may not be a conscious reason. Sometimes we do a lot of things that's subconscious. Our subconscious brain might be in charge of a certain type of behavior or a certain way that we react about things. You might have discovered as a young child that works really well. So we continue to lie our way out of things because it's worked before, right? We have all sorts of reasons why we would do it. But if we don't speak to the other person and try to understand what that might be, especially, I mean, I'm not saying do this with every single Tom, Dick, and Harry, because as Dr. Jacalyn mentioned, you don't want to put your energy into it all of the time. But if it's a relationship that's important to you, then it is worthwhile understanding how the other person thinks, and understanding for ourselves how we think, why we would, in certain situations, maybe not tell the full truth and nothing but the truth. Because in all situations, we have had some of that. Maybe we had partial information, might be that that's what we believed at that stage might be true. Somebody else might not have. There's a wide variety of reasons why it might have happened. So the big thing is, it's a perception. It is how I see the world versus how the next person sees the world and the next person sees the world. And I can promise you, if we have 1 million people in the same spot and we ask them exactly the same question, they will give us 1 million different answers as to how they see it, because we all see it different. We all have a different background. We all have different reference points. Even when we have grown up in the same family, in the same place, with the same parents. I have a different one to my sister because my sister is my sister and I am her sister. So her perception of things and my perception of things won't be the same. Thank goodness. So understand that and then evaluate what is the energy that you want to put into whatever this person is saying that you may or may not be agreeing with. And as Dr. Jacalyn mentioned, where the library might have been part of the story, or maybe not as big a part of the story, because the person wanted to not get in trouble, knowing full well that they will get in trouble if they do what they're going to do. So instead of getting in trouble now, they're lying, which means they will most probably get in trouble later.
And by the way, just to that story that I told, there's also the point that if you're in a relationship where you feel like you have to lie, what does that say? So in other words, if you did stop at the bar and you chose not to pick up your phone and you come home and you have to lie about it, what does that say about your relationship? There's no judgment that I have about that. But if you are in a relationship that you have to consistently lie because you know the other person isn't happy with what you're doing, maybe it's time to reevaluate that relationship, because by lying, you're disrespecting not only the other person and your relationship, but you're also disrespecting yourself. And that disrespect over time will literally eat away at you. We have another comment, which we're going to put up from Roxanne Kailino. I hope I said that right. It sounds like Chalino. No, that would be CIA. Okay, sorry, Roxanne. Thank you for the comment. Sometimes they lie and never tell the truth because they like being bad. You know what? That's very true too. And some people like bad boys or bad girls, for example, right? So we're not here to judge, but some people, it is part of their nature. The way that they grew up, maybe they were lied to. Maybe they grew up in a situation where the only way that they could get ahead was to lie. Maybe their upbringing, whatever the case, we don't know. So it's not for us to judge and it's not for us to condemn. It's for us to figure out what we can accept and what we can't accept. And Mariska, I want to close out on this point because I think it's really important, is someone like you and someone like me, we've done a lot of work. We do a lot of work on ourselves, personal and professional development, right? Education. Not everyone's doing it. If you're watching our show, you might be hearing some of these things like setting boundaries. You know what a boundary is, but maybe you've never actually thought about it in your own life. These might be new concepts. So you have to be in an understanding position that not everyone is exactly where you are. Not everyone will understand what it is we're even talking about today. In fact, we got a few comments from people interesting. I don't understand. Right. Not everybody understands. It's a learning process. But if you feel burnt out in your life, if you find that you are the yes person, yesing everyone to death, and you are exhausted mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever the case may be, you can change that. And it's not going to happen overnight, but you can start to take steps and say, you know what, just like a house might have a fence, right? There's boundaries that we can actually see when you cross a state line, for example, there's a boundary. We can have boundaries in our life to protect us and to protect other people. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually a healthy thing, setting boundaries. So if you want more information about that, you can reach out to Mariska, or you can reach out to me. And thank you, Roxanne. Roxanne wrote, right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Mariska, before we go, I just want to ask people, because we have some new people here. We've got a lot of comments that I didn't have time to put up. But if you would please subscribe to our channels, USA Global TV and Radio and Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, we'd really appreciate it. Even though we're streaming many other places, we'd really love to have you. Maybe this is a better time for us than the time we were doing. I don't know. But Mariska, what is the best way for people to reach you, and who is a good client for you?
So, best way to reach me, you have a couple of options. So, firstly, you can try my email address, which is down at the bottom there or up the top, depending on which screen you are using. So, email address is Mariska, Mariska, at Journey, JOURNEY, 2, discover, DISCOVER.com. So that's the email address. You can also find me on my website, which has a little fill-in form that you can fill in, and then it sends me a message so we can get into contact with each other. Or alternatively, you can also find me on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, you'll find me under Mariska du Preez, or just DU if you are not a close enough friend yet. There you have my profile picture, so you know that you have the correct Mariska there. And on LinkedIn, you can send me a direct message and we can start our conversation that way. So who is it that can contact me? As I mentioned earlier on the show, whether you are a formal leader, so maybe you have stepped from a specialization into leadership and you want to know how to be a better leader in that space, because instead of doing the work yourself, you have a whole team that can do that for you or with you, and you want to enable them to do that. Or you are stepping up within your leadership space. We always need to think about leadership a little bit different as we step up within our leadership space. Or you are just leading in your own life. Doesn't really matter which one of those it is. If you have anything that you want to work with in that space, whether it is relationship building, whether it is communication, or just bringing more humanness into your space so that you can connect with the other human beings around you, really relationships there, and yourself, and bringing some boundaries into your space. That is people and who can contact me. And I look forward to hearing what it is that you want to work on and how we can work together to make you the leader you want to be.
Thank you so much, Mariska. I really appreciate it. And for those of you who are new to our channel, we have over 60 shows. We are in 60 countries and we're in 3 languages, German, French, and English. And this show is normally Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern time, which is Friday. What time your time in Australia?
At the moment, 11 a.m., but that will change soon because you guys are having your time change, I think, next week. And then we are having ours, I think, somewhere in April.
I can't believe it's time to change the clocks again. So what time will it be after the clock change in Australia?
So in Australia, then it would be 10 a.m. on the Friday. And then once our clocks has changed, it will be an hour earlier than that. So yes, on the Australian side, it's continuously changing, but on the US side, it's always 7 p.m.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you, Roxanne, for subscribing. Yay! We really appreciate you. All right, Mariska, I bid you an adieu for your Monday. And I hope you have a great afternoon and evening. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to chatting with you later.
Well, me too. And thank you to Roxanne and everybody else that's been joining us for the show today.
Absolutely. Made it fun. Bye, Mariska.
Bye for now.
Well, thank you again. That wraps up this special episode of A Woman's Prerogative. And so if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can contact me on my LinkedIn, which I'm going to be bringing up right now. And here I am. I'm known as the listening mentor. So there's all of my information there. And if you'd like to know more about our network, you can go to our website, which is usaglobaltv.com. And if you're interested in joining us as a guest, you can learn more information about what we do, but you can go over to book your session and you can come down here and you can follow this. You can have 3 free interviews in the course of a year. And then if you're interested in more than 3, because we have a lot of publicists who send us people, if you're interested in joining our team and if you're interested in us helping promote your work, you can find out everything you need to find out there. So I'll just put this into the comments and you will have that if you want to get in touch. So other than that, I'm going to say goodbye for now. I will be back with one of my programs right after this. And what it's called is What They Didn't Teach You in School. There's still time. All right. Thank you again for being here. I really do appreciate it. Please do subscribe. Here are our channels. Once again, USA Global TV and Radio and Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Now we're going over to our sponsors and we're going to start off with if you or anyone you know is suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's. My mother passed away. She had dementia. I took care of her for over 3 years. It's a tough journey, but there is help. So let's take a listen to Tracy Cram Perkins and the book that she has, Dementia Home Care Before, During, and After. And we actually have a TV show by the same name. So this is a great resource for anybody who's going through that. USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram-Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book Dementia Home Care, How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCram-Perkins.com. Tracy Cram-Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio.
In a noisy world, true connection begins with listening. Elevated listening transforms every conversation in just 5 simple steps. Pause and breathe. Set your intention. Listen with curiosity. Reflect back. Agree on one next step. Join the Listening Mentor on Let's Finally Talk with Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, the Listening Mentor, where we help you find inner peace, one conversation at a time. Streaming every day, Let's Finally Talk TV show with Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, only here on USA Global TV and Radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channels to watch and engage with all our content.
Listen, babe, now, listen, babe, now. Listen, babe, now, listen, babe, now. Listen, babe, now, listen, babe, now.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA-Global-TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.